A very good afternoon to you and a warm welcome to the Day's Counter. Now, this is your daily business show that brings to you exclusives and the latest in the world of business. We sure are happy that you decided to join us at the top of the hour right here on TV47. We've got a lot in store for you today, but first, let's take a look at the top stories for today. Now, the census, which kicks off on Saturday night, will be the 8th since the first one conducted in 1948 and the 6th since Kenya's independence. It is the first one to be carried out using digital gadgets, a paperless process that seeks to ensure accuracy, speed of processing, and security for the data. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, failure to answer enumerators' questions or giving them false information during the upcoming population will attract a fine of 100,000 shillings or 6 months imprisonment. Now, those who play hide and seek with the census enumerators and those who boycott the count will also be risking a 100,000 fine or a 1-year jail term. Now, moving on, Robert Ireri, Embu MCA, has called for prohibition of sale of milk from Uganda in the bid to cushion the country's dairy farmers from huge losses and exploitations by local creamers in the demand and explanation as to what is allowed as cheap milk from Uganda to be sold in Kenya at the expense of local farmers who depend on income from milk sales from the upkeep of their families. Ireri also called for formulation of a policy regulating the production, marketing, and sale of milk and other dairy products within Embu County to protect farmers. Now, Kenya spent a third of its domestic revenue to repay debt. The details contained in the latest edition of the Kenya Gazette shows that the country actually spent 33.7 billion to pay debts out of the 107 billion collected by the Kenya Revenue Authority during the month. According to, this is accounting for about 31.3% of domestic revenue. Now, according to the budget statement for the current financial year presented in June, the country will spend 696.5 billion to serve public debt from 1.807 trillion domestic debt to be collected by the taxman. Data from the Central Bank of Kenya shows Kenya's total public debt is about 5.8 trillion as of June, and 2.7 trillion from the local market and 3.02 trillion borrowed externally. Now, the question of the day today is, what ways do you use to manage your debt? What ways do you use to manage your debt? Tweet us at TV47KE and at Lucy_Riley with the hashtag DaysCounterKE. Moving on to our Business Voices segment, we have notable key figures in the business arena giving their 2 cents in various industry. Now, today we have Kenyan businessman, entrepreneur, and industrialist Chris Kirubi. He is a director at investment company, a business conglomerate in which he is the largest individual shareholder. His background, however, is in complete contrast with how and who he became today. Take a look at that.
Look at Barack Obama. He was thrown away by his father when he was young. He grew up under his auntie's place. He has never told you the struggles he had. All of us who have had struggles, we have managed to be who we are by struggle. These other guys, they are born, they are going to school in a Mercedes. They are 15 years, they have a license. They drive with girlfriends, they go and crash. They go to work somewhere, nobody can tell them what to do because their father is there and they've never been told what to do. They are 2 different lives. Actually, the guy who grew through all that caring and pampered has to really struggle to be good like you. Not because of his mistake, but he grew up through a different system. So as an African, you must be proud of coming from poverty. Actually, it's an accident if you didn't come through poverty. Because you have nothing else to talk about. As you develop yourself, you have no ambition to be anything. You got a Mercedes when you were 18 years old. You slept in beautiful house. You bought the best clothes when you were young. You went on holidays. You stayed in every hotel. Actually, by the time you're 21, you have stayed in every hotel in Mombasa on holiday. You've been in a plane. You traveled club class. Now, why are you working so hard to achieve what else? You done it. You accomplished. But this poor fellow has never seen an inside a plane. So he's struggling. And that's what makes life tam-tam.
Yeah.
Right, very interesting from Chris Kirubi there. I hope you certainly enjoy that. Now, this is how the shilling is performing against other currencies today. Have a look. Welcome to the business news. Now, Maliha Mohammed, a self-taught chef, is actually the new World Guinness Book record holder after 75 hours non-stop cooking. Now, the 36-year-old woman, Mombasa resident, is the first African woman to win this title, beating the last year's winner, Ricky Lumpkin from USA, California, who cooked for a total of 68 hours and 30 minutes and 1 second. Let's listen in on that story.
Kenyan chef Maliha Islam Mohammed is exhausted but overjoyed after stirring pots and serving up hundreds of dishes for the last 75 hours, as she may have set a new Guinness record for the marathon cooking. The 36-year-old self-taught chef challenged the current record held by American Ricky Lumpkin from California, who cooked for 68 hours, 30 minutes and 1 second in December 2018. Maliha and a group of devoted cheerleaders began the culinary marathon on Thursday, August the 15th at exactly 10 a.m. and didn't stop until Sunday, August 18.
Kila kitu inawezekana. It's possible to fight for your dream. And I'm feeling so happy being the first female in Africa as a continent to win. Well, actually, we're waiting for the winning. But I feel I'm a winner already.
Mohammed cooked mostly Kenyan dishes, especially recipes from the Swahili community of the East African coastline. Local media reported that she also made 10 different types of pizza.
I'm a self-taught chef. I taught myself through internet and social media, YouTube channels, Pinterest, anything that related to cooking. For the youth out there, if you have a talent in anything, let alone be cooking, you just have to be persistent in yourself. You need to be relentless of your own dream, because nobody can fight for your dream but yourself.
The challenge was held in Port City of Mombasa, where she lives, and was sponsored by the local brands. Her biggest supporters are evidently a proud family.
This is Chef Maliha Islam, my mother, who broke the Guinness World Record of non-stop cooking 75 hours. And I can walk proudly in front of everyone and say that.
We were very happy to see her achieve her goal for 75 hours continuous cooking. And my advice for her was I told her that, we are all here to support you, but there's only one who will help you, and that is our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're just happy that she has managed.
Efforts to mount an attempt on the record last year were hamstrung by lack of funds to pay sous chefs, a videographer, a photographer, and to buy the multitude of supplies required. Guinness officials will take 2 weeks to review her photos and videos and officially announce if she has indeed clinched the title. Mohammed has caught the fascination of people in the country, where the world record holders are mostly middle to long distance runners.
Right, indeed, a congratulations note to her, of course, as we wait for about 2 days to hear the results. But the takeaway, of course, is be persistent. And of course, you can see the family and relatives and friends and community is very excited and proud of her. Now, moving on into other news, a 2-hour ban has been issued to matatus at Nairobi bus parking areas. The move is said to stop garage parking and car wash businesses. They have been barred from actually parking there. The order was issued on Monday by the City Hall, and all public service vehicles that defy the order will be impounded and fined. That order came after the City Hall highlighted illegal trading in the form of parking that has congested the terminus and led to traffic jams in roads leading to the bus parking areas. Buses pay about 10,000 Kenya shillings monthly parking fees, while minibuses actually pay 8,000 Kenya shillings. A 14-seater pays at least about 5,000 Kenya shillings for the same period. Now, some businessmen have viewed the fees as cheaper than leasing costly and difficult to find space for activities like car parks, washing bays, and garages. Now, moving on, Centum said that it received a deal worth 130 million shillings from a Danish brewing company, which is a 74% decline of the total capital injected into the unit. The acquirer is actually a subsidiary of Bounty Global Management Company, and it is incorporated in the USA and in the exclusive distribution for Carlsberg and Tuborg beer brands. The 370 million approximation loss is on investment represents about 0.5% of the total assets from the firm. Moving on, the East African region has been touted as a sleeping giant due to the sluggish infrastructure. Ranked 149 out of 190 in terms of ease of doing business by the World Bank, the region seemed to lag behind. Our reporter James Kimani had a sit-down with Trademark East Africa to try and get the scope on what is Aid for Trade organizations are doing, the ease of the situation between countries in the region. Take a look.
So, good afternoon, Lucy. I'm coming to you live from Westlands here at the Trademark office as well. We're trying to get a view on what Trademark East Africa really is. And right now I'll be joined by Mr. Alan Gugi, who is the Acting Director Advocacy Work here at Trademark, who will also be trying to shine light on some of the projects that they have been working on. Well, welcome to the conversation, Alan. Well, we start off with if a viewer is at home and doesn't know what Trademark East Africa is, maybe you can try and give us a lowdown on it.
Thank you so much for coming to our office and wanting to share more about what Trademark does with the local people, so that at least they can understand who Trademark is and what Trademark does to try and improve livelihoods across East Africa. When Trademark started back in 2010, we had quite a number of challenges along the transport corridors. And one of the biggest contributors to the cost of doing business was transport costs. And I'll give you an example. A study was undertaken that showed that the cost of a product in the shelf, of an important product in the shelf, can be as high as 40% of the total product cost. And this percentage of transport cost means that this cost is passed down onto the consumer. So you can imagine, to bring it into perspective, you can imagine a tube of toothpaste that has been imported into the region and taken all the way to a country like Burundi and Rwanda. And 40% of the cost of that product that is on the shelf is transport costs. So that means that there is a lot that needed to have been done to try and reverse this process. There were a lot of redundant processes and a lot of manual processes that were in place at the time. And what Trademark did come and do is we came and automated the processes, not just from a systems point of view and IT point of view, but also from an infrastructure point of view. We looked at what was needed to try and reduce the time it takes to transport commodities and what impact this would have on the final price that the consumer pays for these commodities. So Trademark did support the development of one-stop border post crossing at the different border crossings across East Africa. We have constructed 15 so far, and have also set up the IT systems to make it easier for cargo to cross borders. We've been working with private sector organizations to address some policy constraints along the transport corridors, such as NTBs, such as corruption, such as police roadblocks, to remove these things and these barriers to trade from the transport corridor so that cargo can move faster. In other instances, Trademark has also set up infrastructure to ease movement into and out of border crossings. For example, at the port of Mombasa, we've constructed roads to ease congestion around the port. We've constructed access roads towards border crossing areas, so that then this can ease movement of goods towards those border crossing areas and out of those border crossing areas. And we've seen a huge reduction in the time it takes to move cargo within East Africa. I think when Trademark started, we used to talk of more than 2 weeks to transport cargo from Mombasa to Kampala. Right now we are talking of less than 5 days, 3 to 4 days. And that's a remarkable shift in terms of time saving on commodities that are moving along the corridors. Now this may sound very superfluous because it doesn't connect with the common mwananchi, but think about it this way. Any extra day that your good spends on the road, there is uncertainty to that. What does that mean? It means the insurance costs are going up on insuring that cargo while it's in transit. It means that the transport company that is transporting these goods are just piling up their transport costs, because any time that their truck is on the road, it's a risk to them, and this risk has to be covered by somebody. So at the end of the day, if you factor in all these costs, it adds to the cost of a commodity in a shelf, in a shop in Rwanda, in a shop in Kisumu, and this cost is passed down onto the consumer. So what Trademark is trying to do is reduce these uncertainties, reduce these points of that will slow down the movement of cargo along our corridors, with the aim of making goods much more accessible and much cheaply to the common mwananchi.
And you are giving us a solution of public-private partnerships that hasn't, maybe you can say, hasn't been there in years that have passed. Because the private sector, they tend to act on their own. They tend to leave things for the government to do. The construction of roads that you are talking about. Mostly they leave it to the government to create the infrastructure for businesses to trade. So the solution that you are putting in place, the solution that you have incorporated in your overall plan of adding the private-public partnerships, do you think is what we really need as an East African region to get to our goals in terms of transportation and infrastructure?
I think I started by saying that this is a consultative process. It's a process that needs dialogue. And Trademark has taken this very approach, knowing that not one solution fits all, and one solution being driven by the private sector, if it doesn't have the buy-in of the government, may not succeed. And equally, if the government does not involve participation of the private sector and other stakeholders, then whatever interventions are being supported may face challenges. And this is actually enshrined in the policy making that set up the ESC, that any process on policy formulation on issues that will affect the common mwananchi have to involve their inputs, but also have to involve private sector. So it's not just been left to the mandate of the government to bring this change. So it's a collaborative effort that requires all stakeholders. And Trademark realized this from a very early on point, and that's why all our interventions have input from all required stakeholders. This dialogue program, it's called the Public-Private Dialogue Program. Public meaning input from the public sector is needed, and input from the private sector is needed. Now, this may not happen in all cases because projects that need, say, public-private partnerships are quite complex in their nature. But at least on the dialogue side, you can easily have frameworks that can help in terms of encouraging more dialogue and ensuring that inputs from the private sector and other stakeholders are incorporated into policy formulation. And that's why Trademark has taken this approach with both EABC and KEPSA. And we're looking at these engagements both from the very highest point, which is at the presidential level, looking at engaging at the ministerial level, looking at engaging at the judiciary level, at the sectoral council level, and all other organs that have been set either at the national level or at the regional level, so that inputs from all stakeholders are captured into policy making.
And we are talking about different governments in the East African region. We have the Ugandan government, you have the Tanzanian government. When you bring these governments together, they tend to have a ripple effect on one or another. We had Kenya trading Tanzania some few months back, and then there was something that happened along the borderline. Maybe how receptive or how accommodating are the governments in the East African region to this whole idea of you guys coming to improve the infrastructure so that you can ease the business between the countries in the region?
Right. Thanks. I mean, it's a sensitive question, but I think at the same time, let us not forget that the East African community is still standing, and that shows the commitment that the governments still have in the East African region, and they see the potential that a singular region or a singular bloc can have for the East African people, not just in terms of creating employment, in terms of exchanging cultural values, in terms of growth in opportunities. And I think even when you look at it from a political point of view, there is an understanding that each country has its own comparative advantage. So as East Africans, we need to be looking at what our comparative advantages are and focusing on those. And I think that's not lost to our heads of state, who are quite, who understand the region quite well and are quite in touch with the realities on the ground. So I think they are very keen to make sure that this regional integration aspect works. They are very keen to grow intra-regional trade. Before we can even start, trading with people outside of East Africa, there is a greater need to grow intra-regional trade within East Africa, which stands at less than 20%, I think at about 17%. Now, if we can only get this to, say, 40, 50%, the impact within the region will be so high. And this has not been lost to our political class. That's why they have bought into the ideas of enhancing trade through infrastructure, through improving systems. And that's why they are partnering, they're keen on sustaining the partnerships with Trademark and other development partners, so that where there are gaps, then players like Trademark East Africa can come in and help fill those gaps and create efficiencies, create a competitive nature from East Africa and make trade thrive.
Maybe if you can give us in brief, how much, in terms of money, have you put aside so that the whole infrastructure development thing can come to life?
I think if you look at Trademark started off about 10 years ago. So I think at the end of this year we'll be clocking 10 years and we'll be hitting that milestone. Trademark started off in our first strategy with a budget of about $560 million. And our strategy 2, which is our next cycle of funding, is about just slightly over $400 million. And this is expected to grow over the years. So cumulatively, if you look at what Trademark has been able to bring into the East African region in terms of tangible projects that are sustainable and that have led to improving livelihoods, I think we are seeing a very big return on the investment that Trademark has done. So I would look at it from the aspect that, for every dollar that Trademark has invested into the region, I think we've had a return of about $17 to every dollar that we've invested into the region. Now, if you multiply this by the amount that Trademark is looking to pump into the region, you can then see the cumulative benefit that our programs or our interventions are going to have within East Africa. And these benefits, this return on investment is only going to grow better as more people use the projects that Trademark have supported, either at the border crossings, at the ports, or become more competitive because of policies that we have partnered with private sector to support. This return on investment is only going to get bigger. So I think it's important to take note of that and not just look at what Trademark has invested, but what.
Right, now thank you so much for that lengthy and detailed report, James Kimani. Moving on to the next business news. Following the 1.2 billion Kenya shilling sales made to tallow oil, the government has made strides to address the much needed distribution of the money that has been received from the proceeds. Here's more on that story.
We got to national statistics today and look at the revenue. I insist here on revenue contribution by the coffee sector or the tea sector. You come around the number of the range between $1 billion and $1.5 billion a year. Now, oil price at $70 a barrel, if you're producing 70,000 barrels, I think you clearly work out that the revenue to the country will be in the order of about 1.5 billion. What this really means is there's a new important oil and gas sector that's coming in that is not displacing those that exist. It's new, non-cannibalizing, and therefore portends some great future. Obviously, out of the revenue, then you're going to deduct costs, and therefore cash flows to government and to the investors will be on a different.
All right, now it's time to take a short break, and of course when we come back we have a guest in studio who will be joining us. Her name is Pauline Wairimu and she is a debt management expert. But before we go on this break, the question of the day, a reminder, is what ways do you use to manage your debt? What ways do you use to manage your debt? Tweet us at TV47KE and at Lucy_Riley with the hashtag DaysCounterKE. Do stay with us.
Hapa Kisumu wenyeji husema warwa kidala, maana yake tunakukaribisha nyumbani. Hapa kaunti 042 nitakupakulia taarifa, mahojiano na habari zenye usawa na ufasaha.
Mimi upande yangu, mimi ni mtu wa bodaboda.
Kuna kazi, hata sasa niko kwa kazi.
Sasa upande yangu mimi nimeumia zaidi. Zile vitu ninauza ni zile vitu mimi mwenyewe ninatengeleza na mkono yangu.
Jina langu ni Daniel Dembede na hii ni TV47.
Aliingia round na ilikuwa round yake ya kwanza na akaenda akabaki Rani, akakufia Githurai. So hiyo ni sasa 2 years down the line. So mimi nikakuja nikakuwa desperate na watu wangu wawili. I didn't know what to do. So I ventured into early prostitution na stripping. That is what I've been doing. And baadaye ndio nikakujanga nikarealize kuna clients wako na do na ni wa stingy. There are clients who have money but they are stingy.
Sijuangi ama nikiwawekea au baki wakikufa juu mimi nikishaweka ni perembe ile kitu na peremba na jiondoa.
Wiki hii katika Fahari ya County tumezuru kaunti ya Murang'a ambapo tuko kwenye shamba la Kenyatta Farm, huku tumetengeneza makaa ya aina ya briquettes.
tunaichanganya hivi. Ukimaliza kuchanganya, from there inatokea hapa. Makaa ikitoka tunaiweka hapa. Makaa yetu ikiwa ready, tunakuja kwa crates. Kuna crates unaona hapa zimepakiwa makaa. Hii crate moja ni 300.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with us here at TV47. Remember, you are watching the Day's Counter, and of course, this is your daily business show that brings to you the latest in the world of business. Now, as a quick reminder to the question of the day, the question is, what ways do you use to manage your debt? What ways do you use to manage your debt? Tweet us to @TV47KE and @Lucy_Riley with the hashtag DaysCounterKE. All right. Again, thank you so much. I actually have to read a few of the comments coming in from our Facebook page on TV47 Kenya. We've got Andrew Blessed. Thank you so much for watching us. Your response is sticking to your budget and live in line with your income, and you will never borrow unless caught off guard in a way. And then also we have Cyrus Wanjohi. Thank you so much for watching, Cyrus. Your response is cut your cost, I'm sure you meant cost, according to your size. So cut your coat according to your size. So cutting your cost. Thank you so much. Now in studio with us, we've got Pauline Wairimu, who is a debt management expert. Karibu sana, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks.
Fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about your background, how long you've been in this particular industry, and what exactly it is that you do.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. I've been a banker for over 27 years now. I recently jumped into the entrepreneurial space. Mainly, I call myself a financial coach because my interest is in training, coaching, and speaking about your personal money management.
All right, thank you for that. And now, what do you think is the most important thing when it comes to debt management? What is the most important thing?
Okay, two issues here. If you haven't already gotten yourself into debt and you're about to borrow, I always recommend that you ask yourself two questions. One, why are you borrowing? And it's recommended that you borrow to put the money in an asset. That means it will be generating income. Two, how will you pay? It's not enough to borrow, but you also need to know how you will finance or how you'll pay. If you've already gotten into debt, in which most people find themselves already in that, you need to stop borrowing, don't take another loan. Then you also don't rob one person to pay another. Don't rob Peter to pay Paul. And thirdly, try and spend your money on needs only. Just essentials, cut off or reduce on the non-essentials or good to have.
Right, so this is if you're already in debt. And of course, in a research actually conducted, it was discovered that 20% of Kenyans are actually in debt and have a loan or have taken either a loan on any of the mobile lending platforms. So how does one, or how do you devise a debt management plan for someone who walks up to you and decides they want to be able to put their money in order and need to actually get back out of the debt area and the loans area and into the debt-free zone?
So first, I recommend that you have a loan repayment schedule, a monthly one. Put the figure there and exactly what date you'll be paying that. Secondly, I recommend that you also prioritize the debts. Sometimes I recommend that you pay off the ones that cost you most, the ones with the highest interest rate, or the ones that are less in value, the smaller ones. We might also recommend that you do a debt consolidation. Take one debt to pay off all the small ones and then be left with one. And thirdly, please come up with a monthly budget. it's good to track your money, to know where it's going, especially so that you're able to know if you're living above your means or if you're overspending in areas that are not necessarily prudent too.
Of course, now monthly budget would be something very extensive to talk about on another show. But tell me, does debt ever go away, or when does it actually go away?
Debt might not really go away. It just depends again on the decisions that you make as an individual or as a business. You may always perpetually be in debt, not for a bad reason, but because you need recapitalization or you need to grow. So for me, it may or may not be possible to live without debt.
Say for an example, there are two people who've taken a loan on something and now they have a debt, and one person who has co-signed the agreement doesn't pay or defaults or is no longer available. What really happens in such a situation?
Now, when you become a guarantor to a loan or you consign a loan, as you say, it makes you as liable as the person who borrowed. So when the person who borrowed is unable to pay, the lender will come for you. And that is usually put very clearly in the contract that the borrower has signed and you, the guarantor, has signed. So you will be liable to the extent that then the lender can actually come for your assets to recover what the borrower had borrowed. So be very prudent when you have to sign such forms. It had better be for somebody you're very sure about in terms of honesty, integrity, and even the reason why they are borrowing, because you'll be as liable as the borrower in the long run.
Right, in one of our stories today, our top stories actually, we mentioned that Kenya spent about 337 billion on debt alone, and that's now on a global scale. Of course, that's the country. What's your take on this, and really, where is the problem and what can be done, being a debt management expert?
I think, to be honest, we have sort of gone above certain limits. And as a debt expert, I do not entirely say that it's wrong to borrow, as long as you use the first two rules that I gave. Why are you borrowing? Are you putting it in an asset which will generate income? And also, how will you pay? So generally, I feel that we've gone, as a country, we've gone slightly above the normal limits that should be. And maybe the issue is where we've then put this money into. So the effect is slowly trickling to an ordinary mwananchi, who again is suffering the effects because either we're not having enough manufacturing projects that are generating income, the employers then are not making enough profits, and inevitably many people are being laid off. So for you to meet your day-to-day needs, that is to service your lifestyle, you're forced to borrow, which isn't a very good situation currently.
Right. And so what needs to be done then, for example, in the case of the government, what do you think is a good solution to start implementing?
We need to really relook at the debt portfolio. See what we can pay off immediately, and as I said, stop borrowing further and see what will happen. And also coming down to the ordinary mwananchi, we have to start looking at ways of generating more income instead of asking for a salary rise, which maybe the employers may not be in a position to provide. Yes, so think of other ways of generating income, other than saying that you're going to cut off your budget. That might not really work in the long run.
Right. It's very interesting that you've said stop borrowing even further. I don't know, is the government really capable of reaching a place where truly they can say that now we're done, we are not going to take any more, any other funds from outside in order to actually achieve the goals that it's set to achieve? Do you think this is achievable?
It's achievable to some extent. If we look inside us and say, this is where we are. We borrowed to do this, maybe this didn't work. What can we do? What to work with what we have internally? How do we, because if we empower our own people to create their own wealth, not necessarily be employed, but to find ways and means of generating our own wealth, I believe we may not really have to borrow as much. Something can be done there. So we need to empower our people. Nobody is poor. I don't believe people are poor. It's just that you probably don't know how to channel what you have in the right way to generate more. So that would be my take.
For business owners, at what point is it okay for you to declare bankruptcy?
At the point where you actually can't pay the debts that you owe. So that means you actually owe more than you own. And we might find that for you as a business owner, you might find that that could be the easiest way out of those phone calls, those threats that you receive from the creditors. But that has its pros and cons. The advantage would be one, once the debt is written off, that it will be at peace and it won't come again. You would also find that you're now free. But then the flip side is that first, it costs money to file for bankruptcy, and two, your records are tainted, so nobody will touch you in future. And there are two ways you can declare bankruptcy. You apply for it yourself, or your creditors apply for it, but there's a court process that you have to go through, and it has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt that you're actually financially incapable of meeting your obligations.
Right. Going back to the question of the day today, which is what ways do you use to manage your debt? You have talked about having a monthly budget. Probably just point us real quick, because unfortunately our time is running out. You can point us in some specific things that one can begin to do within their monthly budget, especially when you keep in mind that most people find it a little difficult to work within their budget and have the discipline to follow it. So really, what are some pointers that one can actually do in order to retain that consistency long term?
So I would recommend that first, unlike what most of us do, put a portion away for investments as a result of savings. So the first
what
thing
percentage?
is I recommend 20% of your income. Put it aside as savings, but to be invested. So always have an objective. It's not enough to save. Then 50% of your income, spend it on essentials. There are those things that you must incur. Basics like transport, food, rent, water, electricity, school fees if you're a parent. So up to 50% of your income. Then the other 30%, I recommend that you can use it for other things. I call it good to have, non-essentials. You need to dress, you need to take your children out, you need to travel. We are Africans, we have funerals to go for, we have weddings, so all that should fit in within your 30%. So I recommend the 50-20-30 rule of budgeting your income.
All right, and perhaps now just a takeaway as we actually close on our show today. A takeaway really on, is it possible, that notion of, being debt-free? Is there a place really like I'm completely debt-free, I have zero debts, and I can really have the time freedom and the money freedom to do whatever I want? Is that place achievable to get?
Very achievable, Lucy. It is in the lifestyle decisions that you make. At the end of the day, what happens is that we do things out of societal pressure, or because we feel that in our seasons of life we should have achieved this and we haven't. So you make a snap decision to quickly acquire instead of wanting to actually be in a place where you've decided, then you give it time for whatever it is you've invested in to grow, and then later create wealth. And you should look at it as a generational thing or for legacy. So I would recommend that we stop the microwave mentality in wealth creation, because that's what probably has been working against us. So it is possible to live debt-free eventually. So don't fear to borrow. It's not bad to borrow, but be very prudent in what you put that money in as a result of your borrowing. If you're borrowing to service your lifestyle, there's a problem.
All right, thank you so much. If you're borrowing to service your lifestyle, then there is a problem. Now, thank you so much, Pauline Wairimu, for that excellent information right there. And unfortunately, that's the only time I had with you for today. But of course, if you join us again tomorrow, same time, same place, of course, we'll have a lot more in store for you in the business world. Thank you so much to the team that put this together, and as well as social media. For those of you who've been commenting and following up on our program, continue to engage and interact with us on @TV47KE. That's on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and at TV47 Kenya on YouTube. And actually follow myself as well. That's at Lucy_Riley. And always remember to add the hashtag DaysCounterKE. Till tomorrow.